Welcome back to Munro Live. Well, today we have the Jeep Wagoneer 2025 electric vehicle. Now, in all the different reviews that we have done here at Munro Live, you'll notice that we have not done very many Jeeps or Chrysler products, just because since we've been focusing mostly on electric vehicles, there really hasn't been too many offered. But today we do have this Wagoneer. Now, speaking about the exterior for a little bit before we go into my traditional interior reviews, I do want to say the overall styling doesn't say electric vehicle. It looks more like a traditional small SUV, as in the styling you'd see in any gas-powered car. There's nothing about that that really screams, I'm electric. Personally, I like that. I don't like the styling that I think some studios thought they had to do because they were an electric vehicle. But again, looking at the exterior, there are a few things that I would like to criticize or like to point out a little bit. First, this vehicle is $72,000. Now, the only real option that I saw on the sheet was the option of a clear coat, or this specific clear coat. Now, I'm looking at the paint and I have some problems. Well, one, there's orange peel in that clear coat, but you see this tiger striping? There's something wrong on their paint line. They're getting either dry spray or some other type of issue that is preventing a nice uniform paint coat. So that popped out to me. I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but this is a very early build. Hopefully that's something that would be corrected before these go into mass production and wind up possibly in your driveway. Now, in my past life, I worked directly with studios, trying to help them with surface feasibility. A studio would design an overall shape or the theme for a vehicle, as they would say, and they would all be very protective about their shapes. The shape of a mirror, the shape of the body side, certain types of trim. They would often give these shapes names or themes, and they would think that they were part of the DNA of a vehicle. But problem is, some of those shapes aren't practical in the real world. Sometimes they cannot be manufactured. Sometimes they don't work well when you're talking about real materials and real use cases. So there's one thing that I wanted to point out. Look at this lower rocker cover. See this notch? I can almost guarantee you that when a studio designer was designing this vehicle, there was no notch there. This was a nice, straight, streamlined edge. But in production, there's a notch. All right, well, why is there a notch? Well, that has to do with the geometry and mechanics of the way this door is working. Depending on where that hinge is positioned, you'll see that as I open this door, if that trim came all the way out to the corner, it would crash in opening that door. Now, more than likely they realized this issue while they were already too far along in their design. If they were to have sucked in the entire surface, basically to the point where that cut is in, they probably would not have had to have worried about that. But because they went too far without having good understanding of where their surface was and how it was reacting, you get a situation like that. This is, again, me hypothesizing, but looking at that, you can see it too. I think I'm right.
Can you open it again? Thank you.
So at first, when I opened this up, I wanted to look underneath the front. And I was looking for a traditional pull handle for a hood release. And I thought I grabbed it, but you'll notice that is not the hood release. That is a parking brake. So I was sitting here pulling the parking brake until I realized that the hood release is that little button just above it. So let's open that now. Now, as you see, there is not a large frunk space. Now, could just be because they did not have the packaging space within the vehicle. But here's something that you may or may not know. When you have any type of a storage bin like this, if a child can fit inside of it, you have to have some sort of a release from inside of the frunk, inside of the trunk, to be able to open the hood and get back out. Now, this is a very, very small frunk. I would not think that you would be able to fit more than a baby inside of here, but there is still an emergency release button. Now, again, this is the depth of my hand. I don't know if a child of that age or size would be knowledgeable enough to press the button, but based on rules, it is there. Now, here you have a weather seal. Okay, so this presses up against the hood to prevent water, dust, dirt, and debris from getting inside of the front. Now, whenever you design anything like this, you're actually going to be designing your water paths. You know that if water is coming down the window across the cowl, how is it exiting the vehicle? You would test all that stuff. Now, I don't know how they have the water path designed for this vehicle, and I don't know what all conditions they're considering. However, if you look at this seal and look where the seal actually seals on the hood, if this is to keep out dirt, dust, or water, it seems kind of funny that I'm open from inside to outside right through the holes inside of the hood. Now, maybe you're not concerned about water getting up inside of there, but I just think it's funny. If I'm sealing here, basically this and this is the exact same height as that sealing edge. Is there a benefit? I don't know. It looks, I would be suspect. All right, so if we're looking at this seal, now there is another option. Maybe they had designed this to have some sort of a plastic panel, some sort of an NVH panel that would have fit across this surface, and the seal would have then sealed to that. Now, trying to identify if that is true, I would look at what are the types of holes that are provided for some sort of a snap feature, and I do see these. That could possibly be for holding some sort of a wire harness or a tube for a windshield washer, or maybe that is a locking surface for some sort of an NVH panel that they ended up not using. All these little things, kind of like artifacts that we look at as an engineer and understand what were they thinking about, what was that meant for, and why is it still there? Why did it continue past whatever assumed reason they had for it? So again, this is a $70,000 vehicle. So I would tailor my criticism to that type of a price point. Looking at the overall construction of the vehicle, this is a real cut and sew wrapped top roll. We have a bonded mid bolster. We have a cut and sew armrest, and then it's just plastic below. Looking at the styling in this trim, that texture is actually felt. It's not just an inbold film that has a picture. It actually does have that nice texture. And then into this chrome trim, the lighting is actually in the chrome trim itself. Overall styling for the price point, I would say it's on par. Traditionally, in the past, I would say Chrysler gave the customer more in interior options than what they were paying for compared to everyone else on the market. I was always impressed with how much Chrysler was willing to put into their vehicle. But again, this being an electric vehicle and one of the first electric vehicles through Chrysler, I think that this is just on par for that $70,000 price point. I don't really think they're going above and beyond with the interior. Now, some of that styling carries over onto the side of the seat. You'll notice that switchback and that overall style, now that's the same as on their gas-powered vehicles. There are a lot of surfaces and a lot of edges in here that are carryover from the gas-powered vehicles. I do have one problem, however, with this door, and it's the door release. You'll see this is the electronic release for the door. There is still a manual release kind of hidden up underneath this plastic edge. Again, that's with redundancy, because what happens if the power goes out and I cannot get out of the vehicle? I start wondering when I see things like that, then why didn't you just keep the manual release? What is the point in also having the electronic unless there's some other function or feature that needs the electronic release there? But here's my problem. At first you would think, well, this is actually quite convenient. Look, my hand can grab inside of that pull and my thumb easily engages the button. Problem is, that's only true when my arm is extended. If I close this door, and if I had this sitting a little far forward in the way I would normally be driving, the way I would have to contort my arm close to my body this is not viewable and it's not usable in the same way. So I don't really like that button for being able to get out of the car. The overall look, the very, very flat surfboard of the top pad, that's actually common that you will see in the Jeep Cherokee and other recent Chrysler vehicles. So they have a style that they're carrying over. It is very, very clean for this electric vehicle. Again, A-pillar to A-pillar, nice flat uniform, but that is still a cut and sew with a sewn edge. I like the way they were able to do the outside corners. It's always a problem. Now, in the past, this section was thicker, which caused a real big issue with the outside edge. This one, they've thinned it down so that you don't have as much visibility on the outside edge. So the wrap is a little bit cleaner and also hidden by the chrome. So I do like that. Again, it has the look of the air vent going from A-pillar to A-pillar. However, it does not. It has traditional air vents, 4 of them across this vehicle. And this is just trim styling. Now, I have heard that there has been criticism of this display screen and how you move between the displays. Now, I did notice that the first time I hit these buttons, it was actually slow, moving from section to section. But after I had hit them once and then moved back to them again, it tended to speed up. So I don't know if there's something in the system where it actually had to warm up or make its connections. Again, that's just a silly thing I want to say right now, but it did speed up with use. Now, there is a screen on the passenger side. So I just turned the passenger screen on, but here's the thing. I don't know if they have any type of entertainment features in that screen. They want to prevent the driver from watching while driving. I cannot see that screen from the driver position within this vehicle. It's only really viewable from the angle of the passenger, which does help safety. So I'm thankful for that. So I really can't say anything negative about that for the driver. That is just not a surface that the driver will use. It's outside of my driver controls. So looking at the top of the center console, I am a little curious how this surface is being decorated. We have these little high gloss edges between a flat matte finish. I'm thankful for that. At least it's not piano black. But how are they actually doing that? Is that being done in mold? Is that a film? Is that a post process? I'm actually curious about that. I would love to see the process for creating this type of a surface. I think it is very attractive. I think it's fairly clean. So I'm very appreciative of that. Now, for Chrysler vehicles in the past, I have been very critical about their shifters. And it just seemed, again, going back several years, that Chrysler was very unsure of themselves on how they were going to do a shifter. Whether they were going to have some sort of a throttle shifter, if they were going to have the turn knob. I saw some that they actually had the throttle style shifter on top of the instrument panel. It almost seemed like every Chrysler vehicle I got into, there was something different. I think that they kind of have been going to this knob style more and more. So maybe they're getting some commonality, but I used to be very, very critical of their shifters. Now, one other thing about the center console. You'll notice that when I open the lid for the center console, this front surface is actually not completely closed off. This does have wireless charging for your cell phone, so it's a nice little pocket to secure and hold your cell phone. That technically is also slightly accessible even with the armrest closed. So I do like that feature. I like being able to have it accessible. It's not a flat surface where it can be sliding around on the center console. So I really, really do like that. The power outlet. If you go way, way down inside of there, there is a power outlet, 12 volt. It has a door on it, which is nice because if I have any junk in there, at least it's stopping that from going inside of the power outlet. But since it's buried inside of this pocket, it's kind of awkward to use. So it may have been nicer to have that up a little bit higher. to be a little bit more accessible, but it's there. The seats are ventilated. Seats do have a massaging function, which is actually quite nice, driver massage, and also passenger massage. Normally that would only be driver, not passenger, so it's nice to see that being offered at $72,000. I think that does help with that price point, but I think it's still a little high. Looking at the headrest, I like how thin the headrest is. Very, very thin. Now, if you really think about it, I have a headrest, and let's say it's 4 or 5 inches deep. I have a metal rod and a metal structure that's coming up right through the center of it. So from the center out, that's the only portion that's actually providing any type of comfort for the passenger or the driver. Now, with that, however, there is a hard back panel behind this headrest, which if you were sitting in the rear seat and if that's in your head impact area, that's something that you would have to consider. Head impact criteria, ECE requirements for minimum radii, all of that stuff are things that you have to think about and you have to design around as an engineer in automotive. So I would wonder if they have any issues. Obviously they don't if they went into production. It's very, very rounded. Normally for the EC requirements, you have a minimum radii of a few millimeters where you don't want anything sharper than that where your head's going to hit it and possibly cause a contusion or anything else. The overhead and the A-pillars. Now, this is a black interior, which I do not like for our reviews because it tends to hide things. If there are any issues or if there are any neat features, it's hard to show up on camera because of that. But the material is I guess you would call it a suede-like material. I would like to get away from calling this type of microfiber material an artificial suede because it really isn't. It doesn't even feel like real suede. But it's still considered a premium material. This continues through the overhead and then all the way down through the A-pillar. So in one of our videos recently, I was criticizing glove boxes and the way that they function. Now, this is a very expensive vehicle. Most of them at this price point, you would actually have a button that opens the glove box. This is not. This is just a traditional handle. However, there is a shock or a damper in there that's creating a soft open, which is quite nice. This is a flocked surface. Basically, this fine fiber is glued or adhered onto this plastic to give you that nice edge. Now, the only thing that I don't like about this stuff is if you get it dirty, if you get dust in it, it's very, very hard to clean. I just had a few glove boxes done for some of my personal vehicles, and even the packaging material was leaving bits and fuzz inside of the flocking, which was kind of bugging me, so I had to clean all that up. Okay, I have to make mention of the door handles. Now, the reason why I have to make mention of the door handles, I don't know why, but in most of the electric vehicles that we have been reviewing recently, it's as if they want to hide the door handles and they have some sort of a deploying function. It's making them actually quite expensive, and now some of them are quite awkward to actually use. This just has more of a traditional grab it and open the door. I like that. It's comfortable. It's more expected. So Jeep is calling this a Wagoneer, but of course this is not a Grand Wagoneer. This is not a 3-row vehicle. It's more of a traditional size, smaller mid-size SUV. So there's not a lot of room in the rear seating position. I've moved this seat as far forward as it would go just so I can be a little bit more comfortable back here for the video, but that still does leave quite a bit of room where it could have come back. It still could be comfortable for someone of my size. My head does hit the headliner if I'm sitting up straight, so I would have to slouch in the vehicle to not have to worry about that. Looking at the center console, this is all hard plastic, but look at all the different textures and all the different surfaces they've put into that hard plastic. One style of grain, all of the different molded ribs, and then these little protrusions down here. So even though it is a simple molded piece, the studio designers did put a lot of texture in there to make it a little bit more complex, a little bit more stylized. But think about this. All of that surface is free in mold. There's no additional processing. There's no additional materials that had to be added to add that decoration. So if this was completely smooth, it's the exact same price as having this styling. So we have a back panel. This is actually a wrapped back panel. You'll see the stitching right through here. It is a real cut and sew material being applied to a hard plastic. So there's no cushion, there's no foam underneath that. It looks to have been done very, very nicely. Now, I want to make mention of here. So the actual mat pocket itself, there is this plastic trim ring. This is basically closing out the attachment of the vinyl material. This upper surface is what they would call a grocery hook. So basically you can hang a bag or hang something from that feature. There are some vehicles that have this feature. There are many that do not. I just wanted to make mention of this because years ago I was working with a studio and they wanted us to design a new style of grocery hook. They said that there was a complaint that someone had hooked their clothes on the grocery hook while getting out of the vehicle and it had torn their clothes. So they wanted us to design a hook that did not hook. That makes no sense, but we came up with a bunch of different shapes that we tried testing. Some of those shapes actually were quite expensive in the way it had to be manufactured to try and round over all the edges. And finally one day we asked, someone please show me the report where someone ripped their clothes. Show me the actual customer complaint, and no one could find one. And then it was determined that it was basically hearsay and it completely went away and the grocery hook style never changed. So it's not a 3-row vehicle, which means that there is actually a quite large cargo compartment. Looking through this cargo compartment, you see the D-rings up front for tie downs. I have the same style of D-ring front and rear. They're metal, not plastic like in the last vehicle we're reviewing. Now here's the question. Is that better to have that metal ring because it's attached to a plastic component? Does it just make you feel better having it be metal even though what it's attached to is not? You can answer that for yourself. On the side, tucked up inside of this little pocket, you'll notice that these are additional hooks. Again, just to hold a bag or hold some sort of whatever you may have had upright and attached to the side so it's not flying across the vehicle. There's 2 on this side. I don't know why there's 2 side by side unless there's actually some sort of a purchased accessory you can use, because there's only 1 on the other side. Right above that hook, you'll see the 12 volt DC. Now there's a 12 volt there. There is a 12 volt inside of the center console, and there's a 110 on the back of the center console. Question becomes, well, what am I actually hooking or plugging in there? Again, I've said this before. For me, it is a portable air compressor for airing up the tires. I don't want to try and plug that into the dashboard or into the center console if I'm airing up my tires. That makes much more sense to me. The cargo load floor. There is a removable carpet mat over top of the actual load floor. Now, I'm not really going to call this anything stylish, any particular feature, because more than likely you're going to take it out and you're going to set it inside of your garage if you ever plan to get inside of your storage bin. Otherwise, if you're trying to get something out, again, that air compressor on the side of the road, you're throwing that off to the side. Now, I do have a criticism about this load floor. My criticism is it is one piece, one giant part. I have to remove it from the vehicle to get to my air compressor because I don't want to hold this up while I'm trying to work in here with the other hand to take something out. I would like it to be hinged so I can flip the lid back, leave it where it is, and then I can get into my storage bin. So this is something that I would criticize. So closing the lid, button off to the side. Someone was actually saying, well, how much time do I have to get out of the way before it starts coming down to my head? There's actually a couple seconds. It rings a few tones before it actually closes. Then we were questioning this spoiler. The question became, is it getting in the way of the driver from viewing out of the rearview mirror? Because it looks like it's taking up the very, very middle of the window if we consider the windshield, the rear windshield, coming from this surface to this surface. However, if you actually look at where the roof of the vehicle is, the roof of the vehicle basically hits right at this plane. I checked from the driver's seat looking through the rearview mirror. This spoiler is not viewable at all in the rearview mirror. So it's not in the way. How it controls airflow, I of course don't know. I have not seen their testing, any of their wind tunnel stuff. It looks expensive and it's floating in space. I would normally not like that, but obviously it's here for a reason. Hopefully that reason is more than just styling. So my final thoughts for this Jeep Wagoneer. I think from what they're offering for interior comfort and those features, at a $72,000 vehicle, I think it's expected. It's right in line of what it should be. They're not giving you any real extras for that price point, but they're also not going cheap. They are offering something that is premium for that price point. Now, I hope that they're able to fix their paint issue, since again, the paint was the only additional option on this vehicle that increased its price a little bit. There is a problem there on this particular car. Hopefully we don't see that on cars coming out of their factory going through the future. So, thank you very much for watching Munro Live. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope that we can get more Chrysler vehicles and more General Motors vehicles in the future. So if you would like to see those when they become available, please subscribe and continue watching for more videos.